Praise be Jesus Christ and Mary Immaculate. Welcome to this 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time. We're going to read from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 60 to 69. Jesus has just finished the long discourse in the synagogue of Capernaum, a discourse that managed to irritate everyone. The crowd who wanted to make him king, the religious leaders, and the Jews who saw a danger in Jesus' revolutionary approach to a new relationship with God, not based on obedience of the law, but in accepting unconditional love. But what's most dramatic in this passage from John 6 is that it led to many of his own disciples to abandon Jesus. The evangelist writes, "Many of his disciples, after hearing him, said, 'This teaching is too difficult.'" The term difficult, hard, here is translated from the Greek word skleros, which means something that is harsh or offensive. What was so offensive about Jesus' words? Jesus distanced himself from the traditional understanding of reading of the Exodus and the liberation story of Israel. Jesus plainly states that the Exodus was a failure because the bread that they ate in the desert, the manna, did not keep them from dying, and the people died in the desert. That generation never entered the promised land. So Jesus says that everybody died in the desert, which was offensive and unacceptable to them. He also called them to become bread, to be life-giving bread for others. But they wanted to rule. They did not want to be life-giving. They wanted to rule. They didn't want to serve. So who could accept this teaching from Jesus? Jesus knew that his disciples were grumbling, just like the Jews were in the desert, just like the Jews and the religious leaders had done in the past. He asked them, "Does this offend you?" The word offend here is also linked to the idea of stumbling, which appears again in John 16 when Jesus announces his persecution and his death. It is his death that offends them because they see the death of Jesus as the death of everything, of their hopes. Jesus challenges them by saying, "What if you were to see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before?" Here Jesus speaks of the Spirit that gives life and how flesh alone counts for nothing. Eating the bread of the Eucharist without becoming bread for others, it's pointless. Jesus' words are spirit and life. They're meant to awaken and liberate energies of love within us. The Eucharist is about love received and love shared. But Jesus also points that there are some among them that do not believe, that they follow him for their own benefit, not for the benefit of others. Jesus knew from the start who didn't believe, and he knew who would betray him. Unlike the other Gospels, where the betrayal is announced at the Last Supper, John places it here at John 6 to emphasize the connection between the betrayal and the Eucharist. Jesus then says, "This is why I have told you that no one can come to me unless he is attracted by the Father." The Father's work is to stir us in us, to awaken in us a desire for the fullness of life. But without God's Spirit, we fall short. In a dramatic conclusion, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked behind Jesus. They no longer followed him. Jesus was willing, Jesus was willing to be left alone. He let them go. He didn't go chasing after them. Jesus was willing to be left alone rather than to change his mission to reveal the Father's love for everyone. He asked the 12, "Do you also want to leave?" And Simon Peter responded, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words that are of eternal life. We have come to believe that you are the one, that you are the Holy One of God." And Peter's response is partially positive. He acknowledges that Jesus' words bring undeniable life, that his words are eternal, his words are spirit and life. But there's also a negative side, as Peter calls Jesus the Holy One of God, which was the title given to the expected Messiah who would restore the monarchy, dominate the pagans, and impose the Jewish law, the Messiah of popular expectation. But this expression, "we know who you are, the Holy One of God," was also used by the man possessed by an impure spirit in Capernaum's synagogue, as we read in the Gospel of Mark and Luke, casting a shadow on what will follow and even on Peter's eventual betrayal and denial of Jesus. In this passage, we see the tension between human expectations and the radical call of Jesus. Many walked away because they could not accept a Messiah who came to serve, to give his life, and to call us to do the same. Jesus doesn't soften his message to keep followers. Instead, he invites us into the mystery of his love, a love that is willing to give all, even life itself, for the sake of others. As we reflect on Peter's response, we're challenged to consider our own relationship with Jesus. Are we following him because of what we hope to gain, or because we truly believe that he is the way to eternal life? I leave you with a question to ponder and pray about. In what ways is Jesus calling you to be bread for others? And are you willing to follow him even when his path leads to the cross? God bless you.